Hello, duckies and dice fiends. I was behind Cat, but apparently I'm no longer behind Cat. I am now beside Cat. Hello and welcome. This is the Table Talk Show. We do this every Tuesday. I am Kay. I am one of your co-hosts. You can find us right here every Tuesday doing this with a special guest almost every week at this point. You can find David and I right back here on Thursday at this same time where we'll be streaming Baldur's Gate 3. It is our first playthrough. It is co-op the whole way. And Friday, you can find me over at Entropy Emporium for the Weird Wilds War, which is a homebrew 5e campaign where I'm playing my Himbo Teefwork. And we'll be doing some other things, but all of them are embargoed. So I can't tell you about the cool stuff I'm doing between now and then. But David, who the heck is you and what the heck is we doing here?
Hi, I am extremely happy that I got packages yesterday, including some awesome Monster Heart swag, and now I'm blanking on, on the publisher.
Indie Press Revolution.
Yeah, Indie Press Revolution. Listen, I'm not gonna dwell.
Gotcha,
I'm gonna make a post on it, but like I got some stuff and it's awesome. But hi, I'm David. This is the Chaotic Wholesome Presents Tuesday Table Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity so that everybody can have a good time.
Oh, thank you, Ilaria, for the resub. Oh, I forgot to turn those off. We get double notifications this stream. I might be able to turn off the double notification in a moment.
Is that on my end or your end?
That's on my end.
Okay.
We set up the new one and forgot to turn off the old alert. Because that's how we roll here. But you all are not here for us. We are here with a very special guest. Tell us, Fiona, who the heck is you? And what do you do when you're not here?
Well, when I'm not here getting double notifications for stuff. Hello everyone, my name is Fiona, I use she, her pronouns, and I am the host of What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, along with being an improviser, an actual play performer / producer, and just general, maybe a little bit of voiceover stuff as well, but just general good time gal, I hope.
And yes, so tell us about What Am I Rolling? Because it's a cool thing, but the tabletop world is very small and yet somehow very, very large.
Yeah. So What Am I Rolling was born out of three things when I started it about 6 years ago. One was I wanted to learn how to game master. But I'd been playing D&D not that long, about 6 months of it, and I was very worried, like most people are when they first go into like GMing, about, well, people are going to know all the rules. They're going to know what a mimic is as soon as I describe it, etc. So I thought, why don't I try and find a game to run that nobody knows the rules except for me, and therefore I win by default. So there was that sort of aspect to it. So I had way too many RPGs that I got from Kickstarters after being sort of like splurging on them. I also was part of, at the time, I used to work for a higher education institute, so a university, and they were focusing a lot on video content for their courses and stuff. And the problem I'm sure everyone comes into when you do video content is like, I don't like how I look or sound. I'm like, but I can reduce that problem by just giving the audio. And people don't like listening to themselves, but at least they're not focused on what they look like. So I want to do stuff with audio. And then the third thing was I just wanted to meet up with friends more. This was obviously before 2020, and I was in London, in the capital of the UK, and it was, whilst I had friends, everyone was super busy, but I thought if I could trick them into playing an RPG with me, and I record it for content, and then they have an obligation to come and see me. So those were the three things, and it's sort of born out of that. And then since going online, and obviously since moving and all that, it's just grown as a lovely little network of, well, not network, sorry, but like a community of people just basically trying out new RPGs, and sort of the main USP is like teaching people how to learn about a new RPG they probably haven't heard of before, and how they could play it themselves, and just give a little sample of what kind of story you can tell, because that's the thing I always appreciate, is that there's not one RPG for everyone, whether as a player or as a GM, but being able to like learn how to play a good story, because I think that's what the main heart of it is. Like, it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you go, oh my god, you had to be there, these things happen. And so that's What Am I Rolling. That's how it came about.
I'm going to very quickly interrupt to say, Herb, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, everyone. We are Kate and David. with the Table Talk Show here at Chaotic Wholesome Presents with our special guest, Fiona of What Am I Rolling? And this is the Table Talk Show where we talk all things TTRPGs from indies to intersectionality. So thank you for coming by and spending your evening with us. Herb, I'm sure you have to raid and run. Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Yeah, go turn on the air fryer.
So yeah, like I completely understand like where you're coming from, because I knew I wanted to run a game, and D&D was the system that I knew best. And I'm like, I want to run D&D. I know D&D. I know the rules. I don't know the lore. I don't know all the gods. I don't know all the locations in the Forgotten Realm. Everyone's gonna know that I'm a fake nerd. Everyone's gonna call me a fake nerd.
Yep.
And I'm not a fake nerd. I'm a huge nerd, but in different areas. So my solution was, I'm like, well, we're homebrewing an entire setting and campaign.
Classic.
That's because that's so much easier. In a way, it really is than learning.
In a way, yes. There's a lot of where you put your energy stuff, and I was just there going like, I don't want. Yeah, it's like the thing of not getting it wrong and not having a lesser experience. Because certainly when I started, Critical Role was becoming big and that sort of thing, and so people were looking to that, and still are looking to that as like one of the sort of hallmarks of a good actual play, in that sense of like it's got all these qualities and stuff. And I think it was interesting learning for me, going, oh, I can make mistakes, oh, I can set expectations, and it doesn't matter as long as the players are involved and engaged, and like you said, either you create your own world or they have an impact on the story you're creating. So and ultimately I do feel like ultimately it doesn't matter what the system is, as long as people can go, oh wait, I do this cool thing, and you go, oh, absolutely you do this cool thing. Yes, players first always.
It's
the number of incredible GMs, including Candace, who were like, especially it happened a lot in when we did Body and Soul with Q. It was his first time GMing on stream, and he was incredible. And like we get to a point, and they'd be like, oh, roll something, roll this. Like I forgot we're supposed to be rolling. You're just doing so good that roll something. Sorry, David.
The particular point of everybody knows what a mimic is, everybody knows what a blank is, especially since like most home games happen between like level 1 and like level 7, and most actual plays happen around like level 6 or 10 or something like that. So everybody's seeing the same things over and over again. And when Kay and I build a module, obviously we both work on it. There's some things that I work on a little bit more. There are most things that Kay works on a little bit more. But I do like 80% of the encounter design. And one of the discussions we always have is, do we want to throw like a normal thing at people, or do we want to like either build something new or reskin something, or like reflavor something? And like we've had like an entire episode on how to address that specific problem of like, everybody's seen a kobold in combat. Like, how do you change that up and make it more interesting and engaging for people who have a ton of experience, people who've played a lot? And especially for like a lot of forever GMs. We've been fortunate enough whereby at least a couple of players that we've had have been like long-term GMs, and we're like, you haven't been a player in like 3 years, get in here. Yeah. But I'm glad that is not an isolated problem that we have.
Definitely. So now look, we've had this discussion with Fiona, and we talk about this with all our guests and with our chat. Like, we are not here to fan drama. We are not here to give oxygen to BS. We are not here we can discuss problematic things or things we don't like without saying this is bad. We could say, I don't like this, or I think this could or should be better, and have reasons for it. But I want to know, do you have, obviously, like you've played a bunch of systems through this.
Yes.
Like you've been going at this for a while. So was there a system that clicked most with you? And then if you're comfortable sharing, and again, we're not here to give oxygen to stuff we don't want to talk about, but was there a system that did not click with you, that just didn't fit?
This is a very good question. So yeah, I think to date I've ran over 60 different systems, but like that doesn't include like variations thereupon. I'll tell you the one I always talk about because I think it needs to have more, because it's one of those games where it really, again, I think also what makes a system as well as like, 20% is good rules, 20% is good setting or interesting or a good plot hook, and then the rest of it is up to the players and the GM. For me, that game is In Name Only by Doug Lewandowski of Kids on Bikes fame, and Kids on any Kids on stuff, and Jack Rosetree. And it's a $3 game which you can buy somewhere. I'm sure I can send the link afterwards if people are interested. And all it is it's a little bit like Die the RPG in a sense that you are taken from the real world and you're put into this fantasy world. You're taken by some mystic thing. But your avatar, or whatever you'd like to call it, their skills comes from your real name initials. So for example, Fiona would have 5 skills. It would be fire magic, ice magic, oversized weapons, nature magic, and archery. And then you take the number of skills you have away from 8, that's +3. So whenever you use those skills, you just add that thing. So the more letters you have, the more skills you have, but the more jack of trades you're like, to have a go at it. And obviously doubles don't count. So if you're like Anna, you only get 2 things. And just from that, I found it was so easy just to tell people that. People go, well, what's my name? What do I get? And then I put a home rule in it that because you are named characters, so therefore you have these abilities, but then everyone else in the world doesn't have that. So you'd have the baker, the mayor of Smallsville or something like that. And then I would turn to the players and be like, well, what's their name? And then they'd be like, oh, Judith. And I'm like, okay, so now they have, and then they just have a bit more of a fleshed out backstory. So that was their way of collaborating in it. And I'll say the reason why I loved it so much was that, it was a very typical sort of like, we must save the town adventure that we ran. And it's on Where. And it was this bunch of wonderful women that I was a friend of a friend who was like, just come and run this for us. And it was in person. And I just remember having a really bad day at work. I think I hadn't got a job or something like that. I'd gone for an interview, hadn't worked out. So that's the context of this. And they'd go up and they defeat the final boss, and there was this big sacrifice about to happen, and they managed to save it, but the person that they were going to sacrifice, this girl, wasn't waking up, and one of the players was like, oh, I know what to do. And they went over and they shook the person awake, went, Fiona, you need to wake up. And I cannot tell you, I burst into tears. I get very teary-eyed thinking about it now, because it was just such a, when it was like, they saw in that moment and they wanted to bring me into it. And so it was just like a really cool, everyone exploded into that sort of thing. So that's why it always has a little special little place in my heart, that particular system.
That is. Quickly, Cypher, thank you so much for the resubscription. 9 months. I am so grateful. Thank you for hanging out with us. I've told this story a couple times now, and I will always call out Candace because they are such an incredible performer. But we ran Godplane, which is a horror game, which we're going to talk about horror soon. But yeah, we ran Godplane, and I very specifically, especially for people that I had the great fortune of knowing well, every character kind of got like a spotlight trial, like because we had depending upon the run 8 to 10 episodes to bring these characters through a redemption arc. And I don't like making characters fight for spotlight, right? So you reach a point in the game and it's like, it is very clear there is a trial assigned to each character. You don't necessarily know who's going to get it, but it becomes a spotlight on that character, their history, their struggle, and they come out of it with a boon. And it's just a cool like spotlight moment. Ooh, David got light up dice.
Very cute.
So excited.
And I got to, I wrote Bo's trial. Yes, it was for Bo, the character, but it was something that I knew that my friend Candace was struggling with. Like, we specifically wrote that to, give our friend that moment.
Oh, how beautiful.
So it's just wild that there's, that opportunity to, turn it around, and be like, no, we the players are giving this to you.
We can give
this. Isn't a GM. Yeah.
It really sort of because I was always, like I was saying before, that fear of oh, I don't know the rules, and so there's going to be the rules lawyer going, actually, the AC of this, whatever. And it's not like that. Well, it's not, and it's not like that. I don't think it ever has been. I mean, sure, in a small minority of groups that is the case, but now we're in a really lovely future of session zeros, lines of veils and stuff, and just checking in, going, hey, is this all right? And then just carrying on as if it doesn't matter per se, but it just yeah, because I'm a big fan. I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point. But like boundaries and foundries, this idea of foundries being like what's something that brings you joy in an improv scene or in a game scene, and it could be literally something as like a character spotlight, or I want to make sure we get a pirate ship by the end of this if it's within the context of the game. But to answer your second part of the question, a game that didn't click with me necessarily, it's very hard to pick because obviously there's so. Like again, I feel that you always get something out of particular games, and what I've been doing recently on my YouTube is and Twitch is I do Too Long Didn't Read tabletop RPG. So I read through an RPG in about an hour and a half, like as much as I can, usually through a quick start or something that I have, and I always put a link to it because I always think it's interesting to see like, does this work? Is there anything interesting? I'm not a game designer, but I run a lot of games and anything accessible. And one of the most interesting games, so I will preface this by not saying I haven't played it. There's a game called Universalist or Universalese or something like that, and that game had a mechanic of where you would have lots of tokens and you would spend things to make the game go your way, so almost like a micro-transaction. Again, could be interesting, but the reason why I think we had a good time reading it through because it was about 20 years old, this particular game, and the playthrough, the play examples were exquisite in the sense of the male presenting characters were always talking over the femme presenting characters. One guy definitely was like, no, it has to be like this. It was just, but it was shown in the light of like, this is the way you play the game. And you were like, somebody should have copy edited this a little bit just to be like, hey, maybe don't do these sort of things. It was Brian, I think was the name of that particular character. So there's always a Brian in this sort of RPG
Heck,
scene.
Brian. We have a Todd.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always Todd.
Oh, yeah, there's always a Todd.
So again, I've not played it, so I don't know if that particular mechanic works or anything, but I just like the idea that this play example was like the best they could do to show off their system. Yeah. And I was like, absolutely, no femme presenting, anyone that was not a white cis man would play the system thanks to that play example. And yeah, it seemed to have, it had a very interesting backstory, and I think there's definitely something there, but again, it just shows that that game that came out over 20 years ago, I was like, there's a reason there's not been a second edition, that sort of thing.
Last week, we actually got to interview, we had Umbral Knight X on, Stefan, who is a historian and specifically a TTRPG RPG historian. So he was telling us all of the archives that he read through, and it's on the thumbnail because it was the thing that we got to spend probably what you think 10 minutes, David, talking about the roll tables to see if a woman got pregnant after a sexual encounter.
It's awful.
Why?
And there's so many layers of awful.
And like, we've spoken about this before. Like there are like racism, is like a structure. There are all sorts of structures that if you are on the structure, you don't see the structure.
Yes.
Because it's made for you. And the amount of time I've had to spend explaining to a certain demographic of people, not all, but there are certain people who have never experienced the no blank here sign on the door that we all see even though it's not there, and it's like we can feel when we're not welcome in this space. You make it clear in ways that you don't even know because you were on the structure. And you're like, what's wrong with the structure? We're like,
from this very high ivory tower that people are on.
White supremacy and patriarchy and all the other prejudices and all the other structural things built to oppress is like being on a cruise ship. There's ocean water everywhere, and you're standing there shooting pool and everything's fine and you don't feel the water on you unless things get really turbulent, and then why is everything flying everywhere? But the rest of us, if we're lucky, we're in little dinghies, and if we're not lucky, we're in the water. And so for you to stand in your bedroom in a cruise ship and go, why is everybody wet? I'm perfectly dry.
Yeah. But yeah, we, like I said, it's the spending points to get the game to get away. I'm used to be stream game. It's now a home game I'm in. We're playing a Modiphius system called Acton Cthulhu. And we have void points, and you get 3 through the entire course of the game that you can spend to change a fact about a scene.
Wow, I love that.
So I have a number of questions. And I'll give you two. One, out of all the systems that you've played, and it doesn't have to be like your absolute favorite, but like, is there a mechanic that you really dug that stuck out in one of the games? And the other one is, if someone is shopping for a new system to play, what advice would you give them for how to like seek out something, how to look for what they want, warning signs of like a bad system, like like an example game where there's like a terrible, awful, over-speaking
Brian
dude
speaking
on
over
it.
everyone.
Two very good questions. My favorite mechanics and stuff like that changes from game to game. I will say though, because that used to be what drove me to like find games for Where was like, oh, this is an interesting mechanic to show, and that is still true to an extent as well. But I usually have it right here. I don't. It's over there. It's in the. I keep looking over here at the bookshelf of doom with all the RPGs and. But I always lack lyrical about a game that I started playing last year, which has come out published now. But it's called Solemn Veil, which is a folk horror game, and it's set in a UK like Cornwall, so like a very much isolated sort of part of town, and it's so fundamentally British, even though it was written by a Los Angeles game writer. And the system is just simply this: like you have three attributes, mind, body, soul, and you spend 15 points between them, with at least having 3 in each one. And then when you roll a d6, and that you have to equal or beat the challenge difficulty. And in the beginning, the challenge difficulties are like 4, 5, 6. Later on, though, they get to be like 8, 9, etc., and they could be group difficulties, they could be individual. So you can spend points of your body or mind or whatever to certain challenges to up the thing, but you have to do that before you roll. And it's so wonderful. Again, it's that little bit of gambling stuff and going, yeah, I could probably do this. And seeing players like spend lots of points on things where I'm like, that does not matter. You're using them now? Cool. And we've had some really great games because, again, I think people got that vibe of the folk horror. Like I'm thinking of films like Hereditary, The Village, that sort of thing. Was that the weird, the weird village where there's that us versus them mentality, and you being the outside. Yeah,
I'm getting the horror episode of Torchwood.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
that.
they all horror episodes?
There is one in particular.
True.
The house one.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very same similar vibes of like because of that particular line in that Torchwood was like, because it made me happy. And that just summarizes the whole sort of vibe of like, why do people do it? Because it made me happy, even though it's completely morally wrong. So that's the game I really love, because it's such a simple mechanic, and they have other things like stage rules which go to different scenes, and then this thing called the weird pool, whereby you could take more points after you've rolled and you failed. You could take more points from this pool, but that indicates that the village, this place, has ensnared you, and so you build up a weird score and all that sort of thing. So it works so perfectly well for that particular setting. And so that was the first game ever I'd gone, oh, that setting is really great. And it has a very straightforward system to support it. And I've just really enjoyed it recently playing, and that's as I'm running several games in that particular system. Which actually quite nicely leads on to your second question about what advice would I give them? Because obviously I could give them so many recommendations of games to play.
We would be here for a very long time if you...
we'll be midnight several places. Advice, it's so tricky, because I totally understand why. I think because when I do my too long didn't read sort of thing, I always look at what does the game look like on an itch page, or what does it look like, what does the cover look like, and I appreciate that is the main entranceway where people sort of come in and see, like, so I always say when I'm reading it, it's like, if the game designer's watching, make sure the copy, someone else has written your copy for you. I know it's so hard to write your own copy, but like, sell your game to us, because that's the first thing we're going to see, as well as have a nice cover. But I think if you are looking for a game, like, what is it that you really enjoy? Like, do you really love a cooperative, everyone builds in like a world building game? Do you want to have a game that is lots of like social encounters? Like I saw you had Sleep Away, which is such an unusual powered by the apocalypse game, but it's set in a summer camp. But it's great. I loved it. It was one of the best games I played, but the setup was very different. Are you playing online or remote, online or in person? I think just having those little sets of parameters, and also seeing what your players like. Do they want to play a full-on cult Divinity Lost campaign, which I know I'd be in for, but that's not to everyone's tastes. But are people only available to do like a couple of sessions, or are they going to make this a regular thing? So I think those are the things I'd help to narrow down, obviously, the swaths of things. And I'd also, the sort of final bit is like, don't be worried about like, oh, but I want it to, you can start on one game like D&D, like Pathfinder, and go, you know what, this isn't for us, and then move away to the, once you, because I'm a sucker for buying a PDF and then never looking at it ever again. I don't.
Yeah, we know nothing about that. That's
don't
never
look at my
happened to
hard
us.
drives.
Who does that?
But
What kind of monster?
I think always be on the lookout for something new. I'm a big fan of not playing just one game. Like, you can have one regular game, or that's fine. But if you are someone who is a game master, certainly always be on the lookout for another game that just piques your interest. Whether it's a cool cover, whether someone has recommended it, or it's got really interesting like Die the RPG is the one I always sort of recommend. Is it's like Goth Jumanji but about an RPG, and people go, that sounds great, and I'm like, excellent. And it's just, and you build up from there. So those are sort of my a bit of waffle advice of like, you got to set your parameters of it.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is figure out, like, my personal 2 cents added onto this is, figure out what you like and figure out what your table likes and wants. Because like, it took me a very long time to understand why I didn't like certain games, and I realized I like crunchy character creation. I don't want to use a playbook. I want to build a character that is mine. I don't want to have to fit my character into this parameter. Now, if I'm GMing and other people want to do a playbook, cool, that eliminates my problem. I know exactly what your options are.
Else. Yeah.
If people want crunchy combat, your Powered by the Apocalypse is not going to be it.
No.
But if they want the opposite of crunchy combat, but figure out what you want. Also, if you like the gambling, spending points aspects, have you heard? I played this recently. I'm so lucky that I get invited to play new games with awesome people who know the system. I got to play over on 12-Sided Stories, Sword and the Serpentine.
Oh, it's on the list. Hang on, I'm gonna write it down. This is the thing. As soon as someone says something, I write it down. So I don't forget. Sword and what? Sorry. Sword
and the Serpentine. I believe it might be Sword and Serpent. Hold on, my brain. But it's Sword of the Serpentine.
Sword of the Serpentine. Okay, cool.
It's a really cool system. It is set in a city that is sinking.
Love that. Yeah.
And you build your character, and you put points into certain things, and you always have those ranks, right? But you can spend those points to add pluses to your dice before you roll. So that was a very fun, because I also, David has seen how I rolled. Anyone who watched our last session of Baldur's Gate, I went back and watched the last live stream that we did of Chalice, which was a card-based game. I flipped 5 cards and not one of them was above a 5.
Oh no!
Like, when my dice decide heck you, my dice and my cards decide heck you.
Cards as well.
So I really like games that give me modifiers. Because I don't care how many dice I will roll, they will all be 1s. Which is why, and again, I don't know if you played Sagas. Sagas is a 1 is a crit. And David and I played on stream, and Dennis, who made the guy who wrote the game, was like, "Is this for real?" And David's like, "I promise you, it's real. This is Kay's roll every time."
Honestly, a little light on the ones.
Yeah. I'm like, you're not gonna believe it. Oops, I did it again.
And what's particularly funny is Kay is really great at building characters, because Kay will build a character and like select certain things and put it together and be like, on this very obscure talent, I have a plus 15 on that. And then also the character, like all the skills and everything is completely consistent with the original character idea. And so Kay will have a character and then put in the work and grab a bunch of things and stick them all together so that they work and consist. And I'm like, how do you even do this? Like, how? What sort of wizardry?
I obsess. That's all it is. It is obsession. It is unhealthy. And then I also have to Backwater. Have you played Backwater?
No,
It
what's
was made by our
Backwater?
friend Alex. It is a post-apocalyptic American horror game.
Nice.
It is very good. They've got several expansions to it, and it's actually the we 100% stole a mechanic from this. That's when David was asking about what's the mechanic you like. We stole a mechanic from this. I have put it in D&D. I've put it in Pathfinder. I've put it in a system we're building, and it's so simple and it's so good. There's a section that says luck, and you pick even or odd. And then if it's a case of like, is this here? I don't know. Roll a dice.
Ooh.
And if it matches your luck,
Oh,
you
that's
are
very
lucky.
cool. Oh, I like that.
And it's so simple because what dice do I have to? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Roll a
You
dice.
can grab
Roll any
anything.
standard
Roll a
dice.
D4, D10, D100. Doesn't matter. You're rolling. You're rolling.
That's great. I love that.
But yes, like I think I'm playing. I think it's 5 different systems right now.
A
How
couple.
exciting.
Just a few.
Now you get to
So
tell
I
how many
love
different
talking.
characters you're playing.
Hey, Jason, we don't talk about how many characters I have, Dave. We don't
Mhm.
talk about how many pages their backstories are either. Why do you do this to me?
Yep. It definitely wasn't 28 or 33.
We're not talking about these
Somewhere in there. Nope.
Amazing.
I
Kay
don't
has
think it's
never
quite that
written
high. I
a
don't
25 page plus.
It wasn't
backstory.
quite that. It wasn't quite that. It was 12.
I am resisting the urge. It was 12 without the images. It was a little longer with the visual references.
Also, that was in a Google Doc, and you paste one image, and it takes the whole page. So that's
true.
that's not-
Fair.
that's not
True. True.
Lady Luck, welcome on in. But yes, we have attacked you with a whole bunch of questions and a whole bunch of like, ooh, talk to us about systems.
Mhm.
But yeah, tell us, like, what has it been like pulling together? Because one thing we try to talk about that I don't think is said enough
Mm.
is putting together an actual play, be it a live stream, be it a VOD, or be it a podcast.
Mhm.
You are doing multiple jobs. Like, not only you have to be producer, you
dozen.
have to be performer, you have to be the sound person, you have to be the director, you have to be the audio editor, the lighter in some cases. You also have to be the marketing person.
Yeah.
You have to be the social media person. So like, how much did you put into, and in some cases you're the artist.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, and again, you don't have to go like super deep, but like, tell us, what was that process like? What is that process like? What do you focus on versus like, what is a lower priority? Because the only wrong answer is just not doing it. Let me be clear here. And some people have a lot of luck with short form content. Some people have a lot of luck by just pulling in the right tables of known people and just promoting with still images. Tell us your approach.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So yeah, I definitely approached it purely from the podcast angle because I didn't want to worry about the visual stuff per se. Because again, from that sort of the trauma of working with academics who didn't like seeing what they looked like, and a lot of the stuff I will say I'm not trained. Like all the stuff I've learned is my approach to life in general has always been like, I'm just gonna try it. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Because I think certainly from female and femme presenting folks, often they're like, oh, it needs to be perfect. And I've got to that point in my life, watching other streams and other things, and I've gone, that's done, but it's not perfect. So let's just we need to take that philosophy ourselves, you know.
I am a community manager professionally, which means I am a jack of all trades, master of none, but I am so highly proficient.
Yes. Yeah.
That I'm not a master. But
no.
Yeah, and we say this a lot, the other fact is, in order to be good at something, you have to suck at it first.
Oh.
So suck at it first and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Continue now. Sorry.
No,
that is
no,
absolutely a thing that should be said, and we thank you for saying it.
But it's true. And it's, again, I wish I'd known that much earlier. And I think the stuff I've gained is that because I used to do all of my stuff that was in person, I used to literally just set the recorder there. And so, listening back to him, like I remember that the biggest lesson I learned was, and these all seem very esoteric, very niche references, but it would be the stuff like, maybe don't let the person that if someone's hosting you at someone else's flat, maybe don't let one of their flatmates cook dinner whilst you're recording. Just a small hint there, because that took quite a lot out of one recording per se. And obviously scheduling's a big bad and stuff like that, but I found as soon as I was able to go online, and I realized that, because I use Zoom for a lot of my stuff, I know other people use more fancier things as well. I suddenly realized I can actually do this very easily from that sort of sense. Marketing, very hard. I have to put it in my to-do list constantly to just put something out there. But I would say I think I was very lucky. A couple of years ago, I answered I put in a pitch. There's a network, a streaming network called Girls Run These Worlds that sort of came up, and I put in a pitch randomly just like I'll run Alien for a one shot, and they got back to me saying, well, it probably wouldn't work as a one shot, but do you want to do it in the new year? And it got sponsored by Free League and stuff like that, and so that was my first foray. Thank you, first foray into streaming. And I was very lucky that they got all the other, they dealt with the casting, and they were the ones that properly introduced me to Lines and Veils and that sort of process of the session zero. Like, I'd done it before, but not to the same very high standards that they did. And I realized that whilst, I think that was the thing, I was very lucky to work with other people on that aspect in order to get it, to understand it. And so knowing that when I go into my own games now, when I'm trying to do recording or the very odd time streaming, I'm like, okay, so this is my template for the Lines and Veils. Here's the times. I make sure people have breaks, all that sort of thing. And so that ultimately, at the heart of it, the editing and the promotion, all this stuff like it's fine. But I want my number one goal as well as teaching players who may be new to RPGs or veterans, but new to a system. If I can teach them a system and they have a good time, that's what's going to inform all of my my work essentially. Because I do think you can tell very easily when you watch an actual play if someone's not having a good time, and they may have safety tools and stuff like that, or they're not engaged in some way. Like, we've all been there, we've all looked at our phones, we've all looked at a different screen whilst listening in. But that's the one thing, is that I want people to come away and go, gosh, we had a really good time as players. Now, obviously, that could vary in like what it looks like as a performance, perhaps. But I do pride myself on talking to people who for me, I don't care necessarily that if they've done lots of actual plays or it's their first time, as long as they're interested in learning to play and engaged. That's my sort of main sort of like lowest bar, and then they can only go up from there. So like I said, so very waffly answer, I guess, but all goes back to like, if they enjoy the game, whether it's home or recorded, I can build up from there. And I would still say I'm still learning all the time. I'm still learning about new stuff and certainly what I've discovered, like looking through like PDFs of TTRPGs and stuff, and talking about like accessibility and stuff. Like again, just going back to, because I Sleep Away and Wander Home, Possum Creek Games, all of their PDFs have alt text for every single image they have on it.
So good.
And not only does it describe what's in the scene, but it actually gives like context and opinions and stuff like that. And I did not realize that people could be that detailed with alt text. As someone who comes from an academic institution who was writing alt text for like 2 lines describing the thing, someone took the time to do that detail that not a lot of people will see. And so now that is a very high bar. So when I come into TTRPGs and read them, and they've got like lots of images, but they don't have any alt text, I'm like, who does have alt text? Possum Creek Games.
And I learned 2 things about accessibility that are like my biggest takeaways from that, because obviously we want to be inclusive to everybody. Obviously we want to offer an experience that the widest array of people can interact with. But we were running a game, and Kay and I do a lot of theater of the mind, where it's just like, it's over there somewhere. And that visualization is not necessarily how everyone thinks.
No.
And so one of our players was like, hey, both me and like, people in my community have a different, can you like produce a map? Like, it could be a crappy MS Paint thing, which I'm the king of the ugly MS Paint map.
Yes.
And Kay generates gorgeous maps, but
Passable.
And so we built out like a couple of like, major maps for things in the game. And one, the reminder that other people think differently from you, and not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. Like I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, who has ADHD. And he's like, my brain, doesn't work properly. I got ADHD. I'm like, no, like that, your brain is doing what it's supposed to do. And my brain's doing what it's supposed to do. And our together thinking differently, we can approach problems in a much more dynamic way. But making those tools and creating things really expands what, I'm not going to say like the normies, but people who don't necessarily need that accessibility thing can do and can get into. Like when they put in the States, they put like little dips in the curbs, and there's a name for them. For people with wheelchairs and people who have accessibility issues at like, corners and streetlights and everybody used them. Everybody like pushed like carts and baby carts and all sorts of like things on them. And it was just really helpful for everybody, even if you didn't necessarily have a disability. And the same thing happened when we started building in all sorts of like accessibility tools, because like Kate posted in chat our Lines and Veils doc. I did not know, and we love a lot of horror, but there are phobias out there that I had no idea about, and because of like our communities and like they're specific people, they're referenced in the document. Thank you very much for helping. But because they were like, hey, you need to think about these things too, I got to learn about a whole bunch of new things. And going back to the map thing, we built maps for things, and then other players who didn't have necessarily like need them and who were happy to play Theater of the Mind started asking us questions about things that were happening that they wouldn't have asked us otherwise.
Exactly.
And it makes it a richer, more engaging experience. So it's always worth it to spend the time to take that extra step, because you don't know what sort of doors it's going to open up.
Yeah.
I am sad I don't have it here. But for any convention we go to, we give out little fidget toys as part of our Chaotic Wholesome goodie bags. And those are very important for people with certain brain chemistries. But also I want to point out that along with that, a lot of people, especially people who have ADHD or various other things, can be having fun when they don't necessarily look like they're having fun.
Yes, of course.
So communication is also important, and just not, because look, y'all, I'm a fragile little GM. I'm the GM who's all like, oh no, everyone said they had fun, but what if they're just being nice?
Yeah.
What if no one actually had fun? So asking, like, did you have fun? What do you need? One of my favorite things to ask is what is a goal for your character? What do you want out of this character? Because that will give you so much information to what strings can you pull? How can you get this person involved? And keeping the players engaged and excited and curious is it's the goal. Like if you're just interested in telling a story, go write a book.
Yeah. I've recently read there was a book in the Game Master or Dungeon Master series, like how to use proactive role playing, which we did on my other podcast, DM's Book is coming out. I think this week is actually the episode on it. And it was so interesting. It just said like, what if the players were at the forefront, but like you said, like, what are their goals? And then you form like the factions around them. Like, oh, you want a goal to steal this artifact. Well, there is a religious faction that goes, that's our artifact. Or there is like a thieves guild that goes, we want that. We'll employ you to do it. And it just revolutionized that, again, putting it in writing, that going, oh yeah, the players are involved in this in some way. I guess rather than like, again, I'm a GM's pet, because like you were saying before, like forever GM sort of thing. I love being a forever GM, but when I get to play, I'm like, I will listen to every word you say. I will make notes. I will be like, ask the questions, all that sort of thing. But like, but just because like I want to follow that story, but like you were saying, like some people want to make really customizable characters. I'm very much a support partner in that sort of any improv scene. I'm like, oh, you've made a strong choice. I will be your long lost brother. I will be this. I will be that, because that's what I like doing. That because I have very little spoons at the best of times. So I'm like, I don't have a cool, quirky thing. And then someone goes over and go, my cool, quirky thing is to be the foil to this person and stuff like that. So I very much appreciate that. But just going back to the accessibility stuff, again, there's a story from the before times, I guess. I was very adamant that we needed to put like automatic captions on our university's like videos. It's a university that dealt with a lot of medical like degrees, so people becoming doctors, nurses, pediatrics, and paramedics, all that sort of thing. And I got told like we couldn't put automatic captions on because they were so bad. This was before proper AI learning.
Yeah.
That it was laughable. So they turned them off on all these things. That was, I think, in February 2020 when I suggested this. By May 2020, we had to put them on for all of our videos because the audio that our poor academics suddenly having to record all of their lectures was so bad. Even folks who don't necessarily need subtitles were demanding it. So it is very interesting that, like you said, you need it, maybe one particular person that has that sort of disability needs it, but actually lots more people will absolutely use it if it is there and if it's done in a way that's compassionate and it's seen as a normalizing thing.
Exactly.
And it was wild that people were like, oh no, it's too silly, we're just going to turn it off. And I was like, well, you should look into this. Why would you just turn it off and just ignore it? Because people definitely need people. I use subtitles all the time.
Subtitles are always on my Netflix.
Right, exactly.
Originally,
yes,
like the subtitles were a thing for people with ADHD, so they can actually pay attention to a TV show. And then every single stream show had terrible, low, awful volume on dialogue, and so now we all use them so we can hear what everyone's saying.
yeah, we're like, what's going on?
You want to talk about being a GM's pet, and I will hang on every. I broke my. Well, I didn't break, but I boggled my home game GM's mind because I created
oh my word,
a literal conspiracy board for our game because it became
so
very
awesome.
clear. It became very clear that we had to solve a mystery, not just like follow the plot, but figure some stuff out. And I'm like, so I did this, and it's only in character knowledge, and some of it's wrong because my character doesn't know it's wrong, and that hurt. But here's this. My GM's just like,
that is very wholesome. I was running like a Curse of Strahd campaign, and one of the various many suggestions you get in these forums are like, well, why don't you create like an open Notion that they can put on all their session notes, etc., and obviously they get a chance to actually name the sessions as they go. And so obviously they remember what they remember from the session. It's very helpful for me, so then I don't have to make notes. But my God, the amount of times, like, I'll be talking, I'm like, oh, they're not paying attention. It's like, they're just writing down everything I say and then creating memes on it that then appear in the document afterwards. And I'm like, this is brilliant. I'm totally, and again, it just feeds me going like, okay, so this is something they found funny. This is something that, so yeah, there's different ways of like, engaging with stories. So I love the fact you did an absolutely physical thing. I recommend that.
It's all remote. Well, everyone else is in the UK. I'm the only American who's playing in this game. And so I made this and I was like, okay, cool. Like I have this. I'm like, oh no, other people are going to need it. So then I had to turn around and make it in Google Draw.
I was going to say, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so anyone else who wants to contribute, here's this. So I made it twice.
Amazing.
But yeah, we have in that game, we also have like a Giphy channel where live while people are having their dramatic scenes, or it's a horror game, so while people are dying horribly, we're dropping in shit posting gifs. Great.
One of the first things I had to learn in running a game through Discord was I had to make a memes and reactions channel for people to post things.
I'm not a terror. I don't know why you're looking at me like that. I'm totally not responsible.
Right. And yeah, like people cooking up custom memes for your shenanigans. That really changed my experience as a GM.
And speaking of me being the only American in a UK game, we got to talk about Euphoria.
Yes, yeah. So I will say Euphoria is not necessarily my pet project. I've been brought in as a little sort of project manager, but yes, Euphoria it's been launched as of April. Oh gosh, at the time is a weird soup and all that sort of thing. By the wonderful JC Darcy and Ida, And Euphoria is a new actual play platform, streaming, Twitch, YouTube, that sort of thing, in which it aims to raise the bar on stuff like safety, diversity, and the actual sort of excellence of actual plays, specifically for EU and UK TTRPGs. Because, as I sort of mentioned, we all actually, that Alien game I was sort of mentioning, that was the first time I met Darcy and Ida in the game, because I was running that game for them, and we were all UK and EU folk, and a lot of these streams, certainly for there's a whole loads of different streams, but they're mostly in the US, just because you're a little bit further along than the UK and EU. Not saying there's anything in terms of quality at all, but there's just more opportunities. So as a result, all three of us were staying up very late in our time zones to play in these games. And so we thought, why don't we try and bring what we've learned, what we've experienced, and try and bring it to a UK and EU scene and give those people some opportunities as well. And so, we've had our launch, which was in April, and then we're slowly building up to August, which obviously is happening really soon, for our Summer of Sci-Fi, which is our sort of programming for the rest of August, which is all to do with sort of sci-fi using UK and EU tables, with a whole mixture of like interviews, panels, solo games, and some actual plays as well, which we're very excited to show.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have Ada on a while back.
Yeah.
It was Ada and who? I forget their name.
Face.
Yeah, I can
See their face.
Ooh, the face. It's always good.
This is driving me bananas.
So if you see this, I am sorry, I forgotten your name.
Was it Kappa?
No.
Was it Krifu?
Yes, Krifu. Thank you. My brain is like, I see their face.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm also the same. I'm like, so I have to have a big Rolodex of people. So yeah.
And it was a very fun conversation because again, Dave and I are both in America, but like I play Emergency Power Podcast with Pan Stellar Encore, and I play with a bunch of people who work who play the Modifius games, and it was very funny to have the conversation where it was like we realized it's like, oh, we're a room full of just European people. Cool, we don't have to deal with the Death Star and their politics and their
Yep.
We can talk about our stuff.
It's just having that space just to encourage people, because like I think you were saying before, like the actual play space is so big, but then it is quite small. And I think as well, like opportunities to perform or run games, there are places out there, but also like being able to give some money towards it. Now I appreciate, like, I know money in actual play, where is it? But I think normalizing stuff like sponsored streams and being able to give some money for people to, giving their time for performing, like you said, like performing a game that then has to be edited, posted about, streamed, and have the engagement and stuff. Because that is a way of like sharing a game with a community who go, I want to buy that game, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot behind it. And I think obviously, like I said, the US has so many different avenues and stuff. You've got so much in, and I feel like we're better built for it because since moving to the US myself, you're more remote. So whereas in the UK we've only just, I don't want to say just cottoned onto it, but getting better at it. And there are some absolutely cracking people that do it, but people have different levels of experience. People have different levels of internet equipment, all that sort of thing. So just being able to, like, as we said, bring what we know about, like, here's how we've produced an actual play prior with all our knowledge. Let us just take the hard thing away. Anyone that runs the game for us, all they need to worry about is running the game and doing the session zero and doing the lines and veils and creating a wonderful story for that. So it's stuff that really aligns with my sort of things. And then Euphoria, they take care of like the streaming aspect of it, subtitles, promotion, all that sort of thing, as well as sort of giving a message of like, hey, we're uplifting these particular RPGs because they are in keeping with the sci-fi thing and they're from UK or EU publishers, etc. Not to say that obviously we're going to be like, there can only be these kinds of RPGs, etc. It's just more, I think the aspect, I believe, although I'm sure I'll get corrected by Darcy and Ada at some point, it is mostly UK and EU TTRPG scene for in terms of performers and writers and stuff like that, but obviously we're open to other things as well in the future. But that right now is the Summer of Sci-Fi as our main focus.
And again, that's one of the reasons Dave and I do this talk show, is it's like, there's some very simple things that you can do to make your stream better, to make yourself a better player. Everyone talks all the time about being a better GM, and we do talk about how to be a good GM, but being a good player is really important. And a lot of people are really not great players. Like, let's be honest.
Look,
You can be a better player and make everyone at your table better.
you play enough and you will sit at a table with a bad GM. And I'm separating bad GMs from inexperienced GMs. Like, you get better as you go, but you will also sit at a table at some dude who's run 100 tables, and you're like, gosh, something ain't adding up here. And then you have to do your best not to go to the store, buy eggs, come back and throw the eggs at him. But I'm extremely lucky because 99% of the people I've played with have been brilliant, intelligent, sharp agents of chaos.
Yes.
They always throw a wrench in my systems. They always come up with something extremely clever. They always, boil spaghetti to make holy water. Like, there's always like something that both catches me off guard even when I'm trying to expect it, and also really impresses me because it shows their commitment and enjoyment in playing the game. But we don't talk enough about, like, not the like cis white dude who has a chart for like how often women get pregnancies player, but people who just aren't good at it and don't know how to get better. Like, they're not maliciously bad like the dude with the chart, but they're just like, well, I'm doing my best here and I don't know how to get better. And it's important to have resources for them too.
Like being able to do reps. It's something, again, in improv, is that you become better by doing the scenes over and over. And like you said, you're always going to be rubbish to begin with. Like, that's why I pride myself on not constantly being like, if I'm the second worst person in this team, that's great because I've got ways to go. Whereas I feel like the worst person maybe is the worst for certain reasons. I will say, just to mention, that Ida and Krifu did a great stream recently on Euphoria about there was that thread about how to be a better player. Krifu did one on Twitter, which was excellent, and so they came and then discussed it on Euphoria stream. So I would recommend go checking it out because it's so true. I think there is not enough advice on like how to be a better player. I think it's incredibly difficult because it will depend on the system, depend on the table, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I always find my aim is to always be able to play in any scene with anyone and be able to sort of, again, it's that improv thing, like be the good scene partner, lift them up, even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're doing. If you, like you said, they're steamrolling, they're using random tables to determine God knows what, it's like, okay, but I played with them and I look good. Whatever their choices is fine, but I made them look good, so therefore I look good. It's definitely something as an improviser, it feeds so much into my like putting games together, is that I'm just like, what do you want to do? Great, I will come. And then if I come in with a strong choice and it doesn't work, that's fine, because then I can pivot, because I'm not expecting people to pick up my idea and go, this Fiona's had a great idea, put the flag in the TTRPG moon.
This is my scene now. No one else no.
If anything, one of my big flaws, actually, I not that people should look back over their actual plays and critique everything they do, is that I am always like, other people should have a spotlight. Oh, I've got a spotlight, and then I'll rattle through what I'm doing very quickly, because I'm like, well, I'm taking up too much time. And I realize now that it's okay to have slow burn scenes. So that's always my note to myself, saying, just take a breath and play it. It's okay. Like, the GM's in control. They will stop. Yeah. If you're taking over time or anything, like, they're editing you. Like, again, I think a good GM is a good editor, like an improv, is that, when the scene's gone on too long, is that you should have edited it 2 minutes ago. And that's up to the GM to do that. They're in control of that, I think.
Yeah, Rex says, set up the other players to pull off cool moves. Think volleyball, upset spike. Yeah, if you can work with the other player. And also, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but I'm kind of a big personality. This might be shocking to some people. And I also tend to play characters who are big personalities. And I always try to be never. And I try to be very aware of, like, when am I taking up too much space? And like, if I am in the spotlight, how can I bring someone else in? Like, because David knows, through no fault of my own, I am generally the person who decides what we're doing next. It doesn't matter which character I'm playing. Everyone will waffle until it's like, I know, Rex, there's no evidence of any of this about me. So I'm like, how can I be like, I'm going to do this. What do you think? How can I drag someone else in and give them the thing? Because sure, I can make the decisions all the time, but it's more fun if I make someone else make the decision while going like, you expected me to do this.
If you purposely make the wrong decision and then watch everyone panic. No, but
I didn't create and plant my own red herring as a player to punish everyone else.
Incredible.
But also, like, I'm very mindful about making space as a GM. Well, one, because I'm a man, I've been a man my whole life. Like that, and also, like Kay said, we're big personalities. I could very easily fill up a space, fill up a room, be loud, be brash. And also, I'm a writer, and so if as a GM you walk into a place, I can spend the next 2 hours telling you about how awesome this place is. And so there are all these different like tools and techniques that I use and things I keep in mind to make sure that I am making space for my players. And then also as a GM, I also have a responsibility to make sure that the one player who's really quiet, one, is having a good time, and two, has a way to be involved in the game and to have a character spotlight.
And so first up, I love playing with other improvers. Like, I haven't done a ton of improv, but like doing it definitely helped me be. It was actually frustrating. When I was like, I want to learn to GM. What's the best way for me to like download this information? And of course, the internet being very helpful was like, you should take improv. And I'm like, but that doesn't help me learn the system. And they're like, well, I'm like, no, I need to know the rules. Fine, I'll go watch Critical Role until 5e lodges itself in my brain, which is literally how I learned 5e. Which also means a couple Mercer home rules. I didn't realize were Mercer home rules. I thought that was just the way we played the game.
Yeah.
But like in our charity game, our 5e charity game, I got to play with Matt, Improv and RPG, who, you know, my character was like, I got seeds. And Matt took that, and this is the sign of a great improver is Matt did like 3 separate callbacks and expanded on it. First it was seeds, and then it was seeds and nuts, and then it was seeds, nuts, and flax, and it was just like.
And it got funnier every time.
It got funnier every time, especially because my idiot character, my not smart character, hadn't figured out that it was. So those are delightful. If you can find a way to be like, you did something funny, I'm going to reference that. That makes the GM feel good because the kids are playing nice together. And it makes the other players feel good because, you paid attention to what I did. Like, that is, Jason said earlier, part of the reason there's not a lot of advice on how to be a good player is because there's a little bit of not a complete consensus on how to be a good player. But we'll tell you, the best way to be a good player is to pay the heck attention to not just the GM, but to your other players.
Yeah. And that's so difficult to do, I think, online, like just because we are distracted by something. So that's why I would say, like, again, I'm a big proponent of improv. Similarly, I started Where, and I asked Zach of Soul Muppet Gamer, who's famous for Orbital Blues, obviously, and I knew them from previous we'd known each other from the press, and I was like, what's your one tip? And they said, take an improv class, and I was like, I will. And then this started my whole improv thing, and it is just because then you're in a scene, you're actively listening to your partner, you're yesing what they're putting down, but then you can disagree as a character what they're saying, but you are going yes as the player, and it just revolutionized everything I thought about like it. And I too, I'm always a big fan of, like, if I see someone that's on the sideline and obviously in person in improv and they're struggling to, like, they don't have a good idea, I will just literally grab their hand and run on stream and go, where do we go? Like I'll start the scene like that, and just give them that little like push to just have the confidence to do it, because no matter what they say, I'm gonna yes and it. I'm not gonna go, where are we gonna go? That's rubbish. I'm never gonna say that. No. I think it's so tricky and different to, and again, I appreciate, because improv is always like, it's for theatre kids, it's a performance. I think everyone should take at least one improv class, play one RPG, and run an RPG, and you can put them all together, you can put them all differently, but it just makes you think, because if you don't enjoy it, and this is the thing, I don't think improv is for everyone, if you don't enjoy it, you're like, I never have to do that again. But I've learnt
And you have
yes
tools.
anding. Yeah, I've got these tools and I can read about them. I can watch actual plays. I can see other people do. I can just see live shows and go, oh, that's how they play. You never, because I know how scary it is to, as we all do, like, do I put on an accent I can't do? And the answer is no, don't do that, because everyone's going to question it every time you try it. Like, you can play in your own style. You can play between the first person and the third person. It doesn't matter as long as
Third person is still role playing.
it is still role playing. And I feel like my big tip, if anything, with improv is committing to the character 100%. Even if you go, oh, that was a bad thing I just did. If you commit to it, it's easy to get out of it. And I know that sounds really weird, but it's easy to get out of it than going like back and forth, because then the people will go, oh, do you actually mean that as a player that you mean that? If you commit to it, then the other players around you will be like, we don't believe you, and then we'll try and like we'll help you get out of the hole, so to speak. That's my always thing, is like always 100% commit to that choice, because your players will go, they'll be able to see you struggle, and they can edit the scene, they can ask you about it, or even worst case scenario, they'll play an X card, or timeout, or check in, because you have those tools available to you. And it goes back to, I was going to say, like the Foundries thing I was talking about earlier, that idea of like what brings you joy in a scene in an RPG. And for me, apart from like showing we've got a game, we've rolled the dice, we mean something, I love people who do out of the box thinking to solve something, and they turn to me as a GM going, and I go, cool, let's, because that makes me feel a joy, because they've gone, right, you've got this, I've got this, we're going to pull all of our points together, and does it work? And in my head I'm like, this has no bearing on the story,
right?
This has nothing, but they've worked together. What you're saying, they played nicely together, and I want them to succeed. I'm a big fan of the players, so that's always my Foundry, is I want people to do out of the box thinking, because they've engaged with the story, they've engaged with the system, and they've engaged with each other to try and solve whatever the problem is I've put in front of them.
We've had this happen more than once, but the one that springs to mind is in one of our runs of God Playing. One of the characters was like, I have fan fiction of the legendary heroes, and it was completely random and not relevant to the story at all, but then like passed it off to another character, and then we set it up so that there'd be these like fireside chats that the players could have to RP. And two of the players, on multiple occasions, what they were talking about was like the smutty fan fiction between these legendary heroes that they invented.
There was Dritzed boy love in a horror game.
Love that.
Great.
And one of the things I like about playing online is it makes note taking or note passing not nearly as like disruptive, because both in streamed games, in actual plays, and in home games, we'll have the group chat set up in Discord, and things are happening, things are getting really intense. Two players are like either going at each other, or they're having like this, like, and then you'll see in the Discord, they're like, hey, are you good? But like, is this fine? Another person's like, no, go for it. This is great. Or they're like, this, and I've also had players like message me and be like, okay, so like you're really going in on like, the murder of the innocents, maybe like dial it, and I'm like, that's fine. I can dial it back a little bit. Or like, this food scene with this disgusting rotting food is starting to get to me, because I'm sitting here with a chicken wing in my hand, and I be like, okay, I can, but the notes that people can pass each other to plan things out while scenes are doing, or the check-ins that can happen in the middle of like really intense stuff, really helps with the flow, really helps with the performance, and you can see the concern and the safety for all your players in real time, and that's a really wonderful thing that can happen over the course of a game, and I love that, especially about playing online.
I'm a big fan of the pre-planning story beats. Like, you don't have to go into too much detail, like the second Alien game I ran for Ghost Runner as well, because they're both games I ran, they were the scenarios for the Alien games at the star set, and then Destroyer of Worlds. And Destroyer of Worlds is essentially based on Prometheus, where essentially basically a dirty bomb gets exploded over a base that they're on, and the world goes to shit essentially around them. But of course, I was like, look, I'm going to tell you, you're here for a mission. At some point before the end of Act 2, this happens to you. And I'm just going to tell you that there's no way you can stop it. This is some mysterious force that throws this horrible black goo over the base, and people start changing. And I don't want people to go in going, oh, we could have stopped it, we could have saved it. That's going to happen. No, obviously, that's a part of the story I can't change. That is part of the pre-narrative. So if you are not comfortable with that, that is absolutely fine. We thank you for your time for session 0, etc. And then people are like, no, we appreciate you told us that. Because now we can make all of our characters even more tragic, going, when we get out of here, blah, 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 blah. You know, so it was just, because I know some people are like, a small contingency of people are like, don't need safety tools. I'm just giving the story away, all that sort of thing. I'm like, no, if you tell people a little bit advance, they go, oh, and then their brains explode with the creative choices that they can make to make that moment matter to them, both their character and players, and make other people feel it. And it's just, rather than it just happen randomly, possibly out of context, and people being completely sideswiped by it, as you were saying, like, it's just checking and going, oh god, are you good? You know, just making sure that people are okay to play, because you don't know what people are going through, and you don't know, as you were saying before, the lines and veils thing about the horror stuff, you don't know what people find horrific. Like I said, the most horrific game I sort of went through was Cult Divinity Lost, and it says right at the beginning, it goes, hey, this game is definitely not for everyone. Please be mindful. And there's some things in there I go, yeah, I would absolutely not run this or play this at my table, because even I'm like, that's against the line. But the fact it was straight up there, one of the main horror games in the last 10 years that actually has lines, like they have a whole book about how to treat horror, and so as a result, because it is so graphic, it is so intense, and they're very much aware, going, hey, we know this game's not for people, but for those people who want to try it, here's all the stuff, here's all the safety tools you need, and I very much appreciate that. And all their tools could be applied to other horror games as well.
I made poor Urban Bohemian blush so hard the first time I said this in his presence. And it's even funnier because, as most folks know, I am very, very ace. But like, I plan horror games the way other people plan group sex. We got to know the lines. We got to know, everyone's got to know how they can nope out. They got to know what they can expect and what they can and can't do, because then you can give yourself to the experience, right? You can be like, okay, I am uncomfortable with this, but I know that if it gets to be too much, all I have to do is push the button and we move on. And that's great. Yeah. I do want to back up real quick and say, Lurking Writer said, my particular brain chemistry makes it difficult for me to read body language accurately. I want to help give people the spotlight, but I also fear that I won't recognize if someone's comfortable or not. I have a really hard time with this. Not because of a different kind of brain chemistry, because I am an anxious person. Again, I know this might be a surprise to certain people, but I'm a very anxious person. And again, I often play like large, sometimes long-winded characters. But I had an experience recently where it was one game, but we were in 2 separate groups. And one group was pursuing the other group. So we were playing on different weeks. But I had worked with a player from the first group to tie our characters together in a very specific way. And I got to do this really cool reveal where I told these 2 characters who knew this other character, hey, I've got some skin in this game because, and they're like, can you tell me how? So I launched into this whole story of like, well, I'm a magic user and I do but the first time I did magic, I was trying to impress this girl and I made an ass of myself and she was laughing at me and I told her to stop laughing. And it wasn't my voice that came out. And she stopped, but she couldn't control it anymore. And then, that one thing led to the next. Magic is a known thing here, so I was scooped up and taken off to this and taught how to use magic and but I never got to tell Jules that I'm sorry for doing that to her.
Wow.
And it was a very long, and I was worried because as I'm delivering this whole story, you can kind of see people fading in and out and they're listening, but they're looking at other stuff. And then I dropped that and there was like a pause. And then one by one, people were like,
right?
Yeah.
And
they're like, ow.
So, yeah, there was a moment of like, ooh, you did what?
Yeah.
No wonder she feels this way about things. But so to bring this back to your point, and then also linking in with what you were talking about with improv is one of the things I really appreciate, because I feel like you and I started the same way. I had done a bunch of TTRPGs and a bunch of live streams, and I had performed for a large group of people. I was a theater kid, but never an improv theater kid. I was a wannabe theater kid. But I had performed a lot before I started taking improv. So they're like, invite all your friends. And I'm like, I don't need to invite my friend. No, it's not. I'm not shy about this. This is just not the quality that I'm used to putting on for my friends. No offense. But one of the things that they really said, and it is cool if you started with TTRPGs, if you started with performances, and then you go into improv, you get the terms for the stuff you've been doing.
Yes, 100%.
You learn why the stuff you've been doing works, and it's very affirming. But one of the things that they said, which I'm hoping, I'm saying this, lurking writer, because I think I hope this might help you, is don't focus on making the right choice.
100%.
Make the choice, and then make it the right choice. If you spend all of your time in a scene trying to figure out what should I do, is this the smartest thing? It's like in combat. If you're like, what is the absolute most optimal thing that I can do? Your turns are going to take forever.
Yeah.
Do what is impactful, do what is big, do what is fun, and then figure out why is that the right decision. And worst case, if you're like, you know what, I made that big snap decision. Looking back, I don't think that's what my character would have, should have done. How do I explain this? You can work with your GM. You can maybe rewind it. You can, but make the decision, do the big thing, and then figure out why that's the right answer.
I agree.
Exclamation mark, over the head, and Metal Gear Solid surprise sound effect. I need more people to emulate this, or near enough IRL.
And I'd say as well, my sort of another philosophy I do, and I appreciate this is more for players who are playing a new system as well, but I think it's useful. Always ask questions. Like, improv is always like, don't ask questions. But I'm like, if someone goes, really sorry, can you say that again? Because I talk really fast. I like you were saying before about the idea of visualizing and maps and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's this over here. Oh, and there is a horse in the middle of it. And they're like, dial it back.
Right.
Tell us
like,
the horse.
Where'd the horse come from?
Where'd the horse come from? All that sort of thing. So that's something I say. I start as a GM with, Lines of Bells or something, but I always set expectation. I'm like, as a GM, I do not mind you asking me questions about something. I will spend 30 seconds trying to look it up. If I can't find it in the book or online, I'm going to go with my gut, and we'll go with that, and I'll look it up afterwards, and if I'm right, great. If I'm wrong, I've learned the next one, just to keep things moving. If you know the system better than me, like, I would welcome, like, rules, things coming out, and I go, oh, actually this, and I'm like, oh, thank you. Sometimes I know some people would be like you were saying before, the worry, like, I grew up with that sort of worry of like, oh, they know the rules better than me. Embrace that to an extent, saying like, hey, I might be new to this system, I know some people are better at this. I might go to you as GM's corner to give you a little thing going, oh, well, this is what you could do, and I'd welcome that. We had that recently. I ran, we've recorded a few sessions of Savage World, and the GM for that,
Where's Candace?
Right.
The GM for that
favorite system
hasn't run it before, but we have a player who's run it exclusively like the previous edition, and we're all very much like turn to this player, go, oh, what about this? And they're like, is this okay? And I'm like, yes. Do not like, the story is between all of us, but if you've got help for the rules, because we're all learning this at the same time, you are, we're not going to be like, so if you, so I think I'm always a big fan of people asking questions like, again, is this okay? Is that the thing?
Yeah.
But I completely agree. Couple that with and if you're really not sure, ask questions. But if you're like, what do I do in this moment? Just go with the gut feeling. Make the big choice. Always make the big choice, and then commit to it. And then people will be like, oh, that was such a great choice. And you're like, I did not know if that was going to work. It's fine. Like, again, it's a game, and we have the reasons why we have Lines and Bells, and we have Thousand Wishes. The debrief stuff is the reasons that we could talk these through, because we hopefully should be reasonably adult talking about a game and about our feelings, like, even though sometimes, as you were saying before, Kay, that idea, like, characters may be very similar to you, and it's like, that's okay, just as long as you're able to like break those feelings away from the character after the session and make sure that you decompress and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And oh heck, I had a thought, and I feel like it just left my brain as soon as oh heck, David, what was I gonna say? How could you let this happen, David?
Yeah, David.
Listen, I've been a villain a very long time, and this is just one in a long, long series of villainous acts that I will continue to perpetuate.
Oh, I know. People love to complain about a rules lawyer. And look, don't get me wrong. They can be very not fun. But there is like a rules expert. And especially when that rules expert is like, hey, FYI, the rule is this. And we had a person who was great about this in one of my games. It was like, hey, FYI, the rule is this, but this is the GM's game.
Yes.
So if that I always appreciate when someone's like, are you sure? Because I think it's this. And it's like, great. Thank you. Because again, being a GM, you're juggling a lot. And then you're also juggling the fear of everyone is going to know I don't know this system as well as they think I do. It's so obvious to every single person. It's not obvious to every single person.
No.
But that fear is lodged deep in our brains.
Like, I think also the thing is like being a GM is like, you're pretending. I know games aren't therapy, but like pretending to be your player's therapist whilst being a goblin. I mean, you got to say these things because otherwise people will treat them as therapy.
Fair.
There are other
Super fair
out there.
It can be therapeutic. However,
yes,
even if you are playing with a therapist, odds are they are not your therapist. And even if they are your therapist, you probably shouldn't be playing TTRPGs with them. But even if you are, you're not paying them in that moment. So.
Yeah, but I like the idea that you're being the group's therapist, but wearing a goblin mask. So.
Yes. Absolutely. But yes, I think we are nearing the end of our time here. Chat, if you have any questions for the incredible Fiona, we would love to hear them. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us and for talking about systems and therapy and improv and TTRPGs not based in America.
Hey, I will talk about RPGs till the cows come home. So.
I mean, same.
So
imagine that.
I have a question as chat spins up any lingering questions that I have. Sure. So you GM a lot. But if you had to play a system right now, and I'm talking about like someone is standing over your book collection with a container of gasoline and a match and being like, you got to pick one now. What system would you want to be a player in?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was like, I'm looking at them all. They're all going, no, don't burn us.
Right?
I think because I remembered them after you'd asked me what my favorite mechanic was. I think it would have to be The Between by Jason Cordova, who's written like Brindlewood Bay, which has some excellent mechanics in that.
We had him on the show a while back.
Oh, he's brilliant. I really love his stuff, and I know The Between's getting a physical Kickstarter soon. But one thing, the reason I would pick The Between, because I have played in it as a player, and I'm very lucky to have been GM'd by Jason Cordova, because that was the first time I'd ever had a GM do what I call romance right. Because I'm very much like when I'm I'm like, I action, just because I when I'm doing certainly one shots. I don't have time for a relationship. Like the aliens going, like the world's going to dark. I don't have time. We've got to get out of here. But he really showed with that particular system that idea that you're a Victorian monster hunters, which all don't have any your characters don't have backstories. You make the playbooks, etc., and then you learn who they are through playing, which is just I love that flashback stuff. And you can, and then there was definitely some very flirtatious characters in certainly our playthrough, and I was like, oh. What do I do? So that was just such a different way of playing. But then on top of that, what I loved about it was just the way that the flashbacks was really good, and it all just fits so well and neatly together because they had that echoes in the night. Again, I just for your players, for your streamers, so that when you go to the night phase in these games, in The Between, it's like the other London. What else is happening in London? And we describe through prompts like painting the scene of this thing that's happening, and then we would cut back to the action at night, and just being able to cut between these two narratives that aren't connected, but there's like, for example, if there's a description of like, I don't know, a beautiful painted fish pond with lots of bubbles, and then suddenly there's a mention of bubbles in your action, you get XP for connecting those sort of really abstractly. And I just thought that was I took that inspiration and I did it as an improv exercise to get people to think about setting the scene and dress, and like not being like creating a story that is not connected to another narrative was just so interesting, and it was just such a joy that I got to play it. Because was reading it through, I wasn't sure how to run it. So that was the one game I got to be a player in, and I haven't run it, but it's one of those games where I was like, I now want to run this game. So I've actually come at it from the other way. So yeah, it'd have to be The Tween, which is not a physical book yet, but it will be soon. Yeah.
Rex, you may have kind of just answered that with this, but Rex want to know: is there a cool mechanic from a game that you have not mentioned?
Oh well,
I mean, there's a lot, obviously, but
I think well, the one I can, again, just looking at my bookshelf just now, the one I will definitely talk about. Let me see. Oh, just having to think. Oh, I will mention Fight with Spirit by the Story Brewers Publishing. So they've done stuff like The Good Society, which has an excellent way of doing it. Again, about that idea of if you're doing Downton Abbey, Bridgerton, all that sort of thing. And they've got Castles in the Air, which is like a Anna Green Gables sort of thing. But Fight with Spirit is a TTRPG about you playing a sports team. So there was sort of like, if you imagine those anime sports team games. And what's great about it is that it's like a mini game within it where you can play the actual game. It doesn't matter what the rules of the sport are. If it's football, great. If it's something else, that's fine. But I just like that idea of being able to play it. Again, a game within a game when you have some card mechanics as well. But yeah, anything by Story Brewers, especially the Story Brewers, with Good Society and Castle in the Air, they have a letter writing phase. And one thing I like to do is get the players we have the break and get the players to write the letters for them. We saw it with A Court of Fey and Flowers and Dimension 20, that they went and wrote their letters in the break. I did the exact same thing with my players, and I've never seen a table be so quiet as they're writing all their stuff, and then they read out the letters and someone goes, "No, wait, I want to give you my letter," and then rewrite them in the moments. Anything that gets people to get, again, quiet crafting time. Love that sort of thing. So yeah.
And like, again, getting people to combine their storylines and figure out how do we work together. That is joy.
Yeah, anything by Story Brewers, I'd absolutely check them out, because game design for them is again, it uses more board game elements perhaps, but I think that's really worthwhile to check those stuff out.
Yeah, we have Good Society, and I can't run it. I want to run it so bad. I specifically wanted to run it for something. I specifically bought it so we could run it for something, but now I can't remember what. Oh well.
Any occasion to run an RPG, so it's all
right.
good.
But I just had the moment of like, this letter writing thing will be perfect for this thing that we're doing. Now my brain has lost what that was, but we bought it. Lurking Writer wants to know, and again, they've already kind of answered this. What is your single favorite game mechanic from any TTRPG? And do you have a particularly fond memory with it? Which you may have just answered.
So I did it with the in name only for sure, but I mean, I go back to Brindlewood Bay. I think one of my favourite things about Brindlewood Bay is that, again, if people don't know, it is about you solving crime as elderly women in a book club. So Murder, She Wrote meets this eldritch horror. And what I like about it is that all the scenarios, and the same for the Between as well, any of the scenarios, the GM doesn't know, who the murderer is or anything like that. They'll just present you with clues and NPCs and stuff like that, and it's up to the players to then theorize and put the stuff together. And we've had some absolutely wild things, and because the amount of clues you put together, you add to a roll, you minus the difficulty of the scenario, and if you succeed, depending on the tier of success, you might go, yes, that was the murderer, or that wasn't the murderer, and now someone else, the keeper does a strong move, and that person has now been killed, so it wasn't that. But we've I don't think it's come out yet, but I'm sure they won't mind me saying we played a bit of Brindlewood Bay for a podcast called Realms of Peril and Glory, and it was sort of based on the wonderful Naomi Clark, who was running it for us. She has read a lot of the Thursday Murder Club, so Richard Osman's sort of like murder mystery ones, which are all about elderly individuals in a retirement village. And so we were all in this retirement sort of like home. And what was great about it was not only was there a device list of character stuff, but we really honed in on certain characters. And then when we did the theory or something, it led to so much chaos that we definitely had to go back and have a proper think about stuff. Like, my character was on a boat with another character in the middle of the water, and we were like, with the two physical characters, was everyone else is sort of the more verbal, emotional characters, and they're like, well, we're splitting up the party and all that sort of thing. And it was just so nice to be able to play characters who are so unlike us, but also don't get necessarily the not correct representation, but enough representation. I've run Brindlewood Bay recently for my partner and his friends, and some of them have based their characters on grandparents, and I really like that, because that really shows that they're thinking about it and they're like, oh well, this is that, and then they have that backstory already and they can change it as they need to. But it's nice for people to talk about their grandparents. I've done workshops on Brindlewood Bay, and it's just that then they can talk about like, well, this was my grandmother, my nonna, and talk about their history, and like not paint them as this like little old lady, but actually as a very accomplished person.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything Brindlewood Bay, anything by the Gauntlet, to be honest with you, is a great design in itself. But I really love the figurizing in Brindlewood Bay, and they have this mechanic as well for cutting to commercial, which is a really cool GM move. So like the player has failed in something, and they go, we'll get the results right after this commercial. You then give a prompt to the player to be like, it's a commercial for, I don't know, beans, glorious beans, or something like that. The player has to come up with like what the commercial is, and then afterwards you cut back, and the GM makes it so it turns out the failure into a full success, because that's how commercials work. And it's once off move. I just like that as a GM going, no, I want this to succeed, but
That's
you
nice.
have to do a little bit of an improv. So yeah, the cut to commercial, which is only in Brindlewood Bay, is such a really cool improv move that it has nothing mechanically other than to just change it and use it once per mystery.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
Thank
spending
you.
time with us. We have been sharing links and stuff in chat, but remind us as we are outroing, remind us who you are, what you do, and where we can find you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, when I'm not waxing lyrical about being an old lady, or any of the other horror RPGs that I've been looking at, I've been Fiona Howart, use she, her pronouns, and I am the host of What Am I Rolling, which is a twice-monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, which you can find wherever you listen to podcasts. Not that I've spoken about it much, but I'm also the co-host of the DM's Book Club. So if you're like, I only need to do one RPG, if it's D&D, check out the weekly Book Club podcast where we talk about some D&D lore and how we can improve it, make it accessible. And for anyone who wants to tell a story, we read the books, so you don't have to. So that's What Am I Rolling and the DM's Book Club, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And for chat hanging out, I said I was going to do this at the start, but I forgot. We are fortunate enough to be in the D&D creators. So we have the new player's handbook.
Woohoo!
I literally cannot open it to show you anything from it, but I can show you the front and the back. I have been spending the past evening reading through it. So if you have questions, if you would like to know things ahead of it coming out, I will do my best to answer. It is a robust 384 pages.
Ooh, beefy.
And there's a lot of really pretty art, y'all. And I think that's literally all I can say about that.
And y'all should be really impressed. And this is a deep Discord inside joke, but Kay managed to read all 384 pages on a Gulf stream.
Amazing.
But yes, if you have questions, if you would like, feel free to join our Discord. I will be answering them as best I can. And it is sturdy, and it is not like light. I mean,
it's a chunky
flipped
boy.
through it.
That is a very chunky book.
Let's see. For reference,
Ooh,
old, new.
That is pretty chunky.
So it is chunkier than the original. I don't know how much that's showing up, but it is definitely thicker. THICC. But yes, thank you all for joining us. I am Kay. I am one half of Chaotic Wholesome Presents. You find us here every Tuesday doing this. Find us this Thursday streaming Baldur's Gate 3. Find me over at Entropy Emporium, playing Weird Wilds War. I'm playing Brandon. He's a T-Fork Ranger, and he's not a terror, because none of the characters I play are terrors. I didn't give David psychic damage.
Look, every time I hear Brandon, I think to myself, welcome to Goodberry, home of the Goodberry. Can I take your order? And it has never left me. It has offered me no peace, no solace.
And yes, we will be right back here next Tuesday with another incredible guest. Who do we have next week? I gotta remember. Next week I think it's just us. So it'll be after the first, so I might actually be able to just talk about the new player's handbook. That might be what we do. I'm super impressed with Kay reading that book while on a golf stream. You know, David is full of lies about me, most of which are kind, but the ones that are not are very terrible. David, who the heck is you, and what the heck have we been doing here?
Hi, I am excited to talk about the PHP next week, but I am I'm David, and this is the Chaotic Wholesome presents tabletop on Tuesdays talking stream thing, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, how to be a better person, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusivity, so we all can have a good time.
And we are going to go right over to someone. I have left that choice to David. So I will find out when you all do. Thank you again for hanging out with us. Be sure to check out What Am I Rolling and Euphoria, especially if you are European based. Go find your peeps and be free of the Death Star, at least for a session. Thank you all. You are wonderful. Thank you to Urban Bohemian for the raid. Thank you to Ilaria and Cypher for the resubs. We appreciate you all. Be kind to yourself, be excellent to others, and we will see you all next time.
Bye.